This story was about three friends named Vikram, Sunil, and John. To better fit an American setting, their names became Victor, Sam, and Jake, and the crowded city of Bombay was replaced with New York City. The three had grown up together in a small rural town and had always dreamed of making something big out of their lives. Carrying those dreams, they arrived in the massive, fast-moving city, hoping success would come quickly. However, reality turned out to be much harsher than they had imagined. Victor and Sam, who had spent most of their lives studying in their quiet hometown, had never thought that chasing success would come with so much struggle and disappointment. Jake, on the other hand, was slightly more prepared for the hardships. He had already worked with his father in a small family business and had seen what real struggle looked like. Because of that, he knew success would not come overnight, and that patience and persistence were necessary. The entire day passed as the three wandered through busy streets, going from one place to another, asking for jobs and opportunities. By evening, they had nothing. No job, no place to stay, and very little money left. Exhausted and disheartened, they stopped at a small roadside diner and shared a cheap meal, trying to stretch the little cash they had. They had only planned for a day or two, believing that something miraculous would happen as soon as they reached the city. But now, that hope seemed distant. Later, while walking aimlessly, they found themselves near an old apartment building on a quieter street. With nowhere else to go, they sat down near the entrance gate, hoping to figure out their next move. Hours passed in silence. Eventually, the building's security guard noticed them and approached angrily, asking who they were and why they were sitting there. Startled, the three quickly stood up and explained their situation. Strangers in a new city with no connections, no place to stay, and no direction. The guard listened carefully, and as he looked at their tired faces, something in him softened. He remembered his own early days in the city, when he had been in a similar situation, struggling and desperate until someone had helped him. Jake, being the most practical among them, asked the guard if there was any way they could find a place to stay, even temporarily. He knew they could not afford rent yet, and no one would willingly give them a room without money. The guard thought for a moment and then called a friend of his who worked as a caretaker at a large house a few miles away, house number 17. On the phone, the guard explained everything about the three boys. His friend replied that his employer had gone out of town with his family for 2 months, and until they returned, there might be a way to arrange a temporary stay for them. Hearing this, the three friends felt a sudden wave of relief and excitement. They eagerly asked the guard how they could reach the place. The guard told them it was too far to travel at night, and transportation in that area would be difficult to find. He suggested they spend the night near the building and go together in the morning. With no better option, they agreed. The next morning, they followed the guard to the location. As they reached house number 17, they were stunned. The place was not just a house, it was a massive, elegant mansion standing silently in a quiet neighborhood. Its beauty and size left the three friends speechless. However, beneath its grand appearance, there was something strangely unsettling about the place, something they could not quite explain, but all of them felt it the moment they stepped closer. The three friends could hardly believe their luck. Staying in such a beautiful mansion felt unreal to them, as if things were finally starting to fall into place. The caretaker led Victor, Sam, and Jake to a spacious guest room. As soon as they entered, a sense of relief washed over them. For the first time since arriving in New York, they felt safe and comfortable. They quickly freshened up, changed into clean clothes, and stepped out again to search for work. At least now, they had a roof over their heads. What they needed next was a stable job to survive. But the day went just like the previous one. From morning till evening, they wandered through the city, asking for work, facing rejection after rejection. By the time they returned to the mansion, they were exhausted and discouraged. Fortunately, the caretaker had arranged food for them, which gave them some comfort. That night marked their first night in the mansion. Around midnight, something strange happened. Victor suddenly woke up, but he was no longer in his bed. Instead, he found himself standing inside a dark, dusty basement filled with old furniture and forgotten belongings. Confused and frightened, he tried to understand how he had gotten there. Panic set in, and he called out for Sam and Jake, but his voice seemed to vanish into the darkness. No one responded. Then, suddenly, all other sounds faded away. The silence was replaced by a faint, haunting sound, a woman crying. Victor froze. The sound echoed through the basement, growing clearer and more painful with each passing second. Gathering his courage, he shouted, asking who she was and why she was crying. But before he could hear any response, everything went black. The next moment, he found himself back in his bed. His body was drenched in sweat, and his heart was racing uncontrollably. Terrified, he immediately woke up Sam and Jake and told them everything. However, instead of taking him seriously, they laughed it off. They told him it was just a nightmare, nothing more. According to them, there was no one else in the mansion besides the three of them and the caretaker. Slowly, Victor began to doubt himself. He convinced himself it must have been a bad dream and tried to go back to sleep. The next morning, the three got ready once again and stepped out to search for jobs. But as soon as they walked out of the mansion gate, something unexpected happened. A woman suddenly appeared in front of them and handed Victor a piece of paper. Before they could even react, she turned and quickly disappeared down the street. Confused, the three friends opened the paper. It contained an address and a short message saying that they would find work there. They were stunned. None of them understood how that woman knew about their situation. For a moment, they hesitated, questioning whether they should trust it. But their desperation for a job outweighed their doubts. They began to believe that maybe this was some kind of divine help, an opportunity sent to them when they needed it the most. Without wasting time, they decided to follow the address. When they reached the location, they were surprised to see a massive corporate building standing before them. It was clearly a large and well-established company. They walked up to the entrance and showed the note to the security guard, who then forwarded it to the hiring department. As soon as the manager saw the note, his expression changed. The paper carried the signature of the company's owner. He immediately called the three inside and asked them how they knew his boss. Victor, trying to stay confident despite the confusion, replied that he was a friend of the owner. The manager seemed uncertain, but with the owner's signature clearly visible on the paper, he had little choice. He could not ignore an order that appeared to come directly from the top. And just like that, the three friends were given jobs in the company, without interviews, without questions. None of them realized that the help they had received might come with a cost, and that the mysterious woman and the strange happenings in the mansion were somehow connected in ways they had yet to understand. At the company, the owner was away on a 7-day international business tour, visiting partner firms overseas. During that time, he was completely unreachable. Because of this, the manager had no way to verify anything directly and decided to trust the signed note. He officially hired Victor, Sam, and Jake, then began showing them around the workplace. As they walked through the office corridors, something strange happened. Victor suddenly drifted away from the group without saying a word and took a different hallway, as if he already knew where he was going. Within moments, he reached the CEO's private office. To everyone's shock, he stood in front of the locked door and entered the correct passcode on the digital lock. The door clicked open. The manager froze in disbelief. That password was known only to the company's owner. There was no way an outsider could have known it. From that moment, the manager became convinced that Victor must be someone extremely important, perhaps personally sent or trusted by the boss. Without questioning further, he allowed Victor to step inside. Sam and Jake watched all of this completely confused. They could not understand how Victor suddenly knew things that none of them had ever seen before. Before they could ask anything, Victor turned to them with a strangely calm but firm expression and told everyone to leave the office. Then he shut the door behind him. Hours passed. Eventually, the manager received a call from the company's owner. His voice sounded tense and angry. He immediately asked whether anyone had accessed his personal computer. The manager hesitated for a moment, then explained everything that had happened. As soon as the owner heard this, he panicked. He shouted at the manager to stop that person immediately, warning that if he didn't, everything would be ruined. Alarmed, the manager rushed to the office and forced the door open. Inside, he found Victor lying unconscious on the floor. Security guards quickly lifted him and placed him back in a chair. After a few moments, Victor regained consciousness. The manager, now furious and anxious, demanded to know what he had done. He warned him that the boss was extremely angry, but Victor looked confused and disoriented. He had no memory of entering the building, unlocking the door, or using the computer. The last thing he remembered was leaving the mansion that morning. What no one in that room knew was the truth behind everything. The mansion where the three friends were staying had once belonged to the same company owner. Years ago, he had secretly bought it for a young woman who worked in his office. Though he was already married, he had been involved with her and would occasionally stay there with her in private. However, he had always feared that one day she might become a threat to his reputation. To protect himself, he had secretly recorded compromising videos of her without her consent. One day, the woman discovered the truth. Furious and betrayed, she confronted him. Their argument quickly turned violent. In the struggle, she suffered a severe head injury and died on the spot. Panicking, the man buried her body in the garden of the mansion, hiding the crime forever. With her death, the secret was buried, or so he believed. Years later, when Victor, Sam, and Jake unknowingly arrived at that same mansion, something awakened. While wandering in the garden, Victor had accidentally stepped on the exact spot where the woman had been buried. In that moment, a connection was formed. Her restless spirit, filled with anger and a desire for justice, attached itself to him. Slowly, she began to take control of his actions. It was not Victor who had entered the office that day. It was her. Through him, she reached the one place that could expose the truth, the boss's private computer. Using Victor's body, she accessed hidden files and released the dark secrets onto the internet. The evidence spread rapidly, making the crime impossible to hide. Within days, authorities arrested the company owner overseas. His carefully hidden past was exposed to the world, and his reputation was destroyed. In the end, justice was served. But for Victor, the nightmare was far from over, because something that had once entered him had not fully left. In the end, even after her death, the young woman had managed to take her revenge. The truth she had been silenced for was finally revealed to the world, and the man responsible for her suffering faced the consequences of his actions. It seemed that her restless spirit had finally achieved what it had been waiting for all along. Perhaps now she could find peace. As for Victor, Sam, and Jake, they chose not to dwell on what had happened. The mansion, the strange nights, and the terrifying incidents all felt like a distant nightmare, something too dark and unreal to fully understand. They eventually moved on with their lives, focusing on their work and trying to leave the past behind. However, deep down, a quiet unease always remained within them. Some memories are not so easily forgotten. And with that, the story came to an end, a haunting tale of secrets, betrayal, and a spirit that refused to rest until justice was served. If you enjoyed this scary story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more horror content.